We interrupt this news broadcast to bring you important news from the media world. A new crime film and its director have taken the world by storm. We sent our media interrelations reporter to find out why. Over to Lewis Sillery, who is in Little Yeldon.
Thank you, Jack. Today I caught up with Tamar Leppard, the director of Old Maid, a new crime film that's taken the film industry by storm. And it hasn't even been released yet. Is there anything that you really wanted to feature in your film?
Well, when it came to making my trailer, my main aim from the very beginning was for it to be different. I really didn't want it to sort of fully obey every single convention for the crime genre. And so therefore when I was planning my trailer and everything, I kept this aim in mind for the entirety.
Did you achieve this? And if so, how did you think that you managed to do this?
Sort of like I said before, I really wanted my trailer to sort of stand out from the crowd. As I felt that this would sort of attract audiences, meaning that when my film finally gets released, it would have a good backing from the audience, as they would have enjoyed watching my trailer and would want to see more. I feel that I did actually sort of manage to accomplish my aims that I set out for myself at the start, and this is mainly because the plot that I chose, I feel sort of allowed me to do this, because my plot featured one sort of standout element that allowed me to fully develop and challenge the conventions for the crime genre. This was sort of the fact that my main antagonist was actually played by a female whose sort of only aim in life was to actually kill men. And although this has been done before in other films like Basic Instinct and Fatal Attraction, it's sort of very rare that the audiences see this actually come to screen and sort of become sort of normal. And I think sort of this is the main reason behind my accomplishment.
As you mentioned before, you tried to break the conventions of the crime genre. Were there particular conventions that you stuck to?
Yes, of course there were, because obviously in order to make a film a particular genre, it has to fit in with at least some of the conventions, otherwise the product will not be able to fit in within sort of any genre at all. There were in actual fact several conventions that I actually followed through the making of this trailer. For example, I've included a detective-like character, and these are seen in sort of all great crime films. I also made sure a lot of mystery was created through the use of sort of camera angles and props. Also, a lot of the mise en scène that I decided to use in the final trailer comply with a few conventions. So I've obviously got my main character is a detective in a suit, which can be seen in Pulp Fiction, Heat and Seven, which are all great crime films and feature their main characters wearing suits. And if you look at the detective in my trailer, he is obviously also as well wearing a suit.
So obviously you did this all for a reason. Why was this?
It's just to appeal to my audience.
Why did you think these tactics appealed to the audience?
Because this is sort of what audiences have grown up watching. All the conventions that I decided to stick to are elements that I used to create good films, and the conventions that I sort of chose and decided to ignore were ignored for a reason. They were sort of ignored so that I could give the audience something different, a new type of film that would give them something new and interesting to watch. I mean, yes, I stuck to the conventions, but on the other hand, I also avoided sticking to certain conventions. When creating this trailer, I wanted to be able to remove the idea of sort of male power from the audience's mind, and I sort of sat there and thought, why is it always males shown as violent and powerful people, and sort of why can't there be a female character who's violent enough to sort of kill men, and why can't detectives be outsmarted by a female who is always 2 steps ahead of the mark for once? And this is sort of the idea that strived me to create my trailer, and I know that this will appeal to audiences as I have sort of conducted countless amounts of audience research that sort of back up my claims. The audience have been waiting for a film like this really from what I've discovered, and I think it's my film that sort of quenched the thirst for a sort of a unique setup of a film that completely sort of turns the audience's mindsets and makes them think of other possibilities. I think this film could even sort of open up the door for other films like this, which will sort of lead to more variety in sort of the film industry. I mean, maybe it's time we sort of see sort of being sensitive and vulnerable as not only something that women characters can sort of portray, but also that characteristics that are sort of connected with males as well. And this is why I think that the tactics that I've used will sort of be sufficient in attracting my audience.
It's clear that you felt very strongly about your trailer, and I wish you all the luck in the world for the release of the film.
Thank you, it means a lot.
So that was Lewis Sillery's interview with Tamar Leppard about the new crime film that has created a storm within the media industry. with people claiming it marks the end of male-orientated film plots. And now back to the news where you are.
Well, hello there. As I'm sure you'll recognise me from the first half of this video, I am the director of the new film Old Maid. As you've just seen, I did a news reporter earlier on in the week with a news reporter regarding the trailer for my film. However, in that interview, I feel that I didn't get enough time to fully explain the points that I was talking about. So I've sort of decided to film this little video to show you all, basically, that I have more to say. So I do have some prompts here, but that's because a good artiste is always prepared. So let's go. So I'm going to be talking about four different areas of media the four different areas of media that I had to consider when I was sort of planning my trailer, and these are camera work, mise-en-scène, editing and sound. The first part I'm going to talk about is mise-en-scène. So I'm basically just going to be talking to you about the sort of mise-en-scène that I use throughout my trailer. I feel that a lot of this was sort of very conventional of the crime genre. For example, I placed my protagonist in a suit due to the fact that he is actually a detective, and of course if you look at the costume of Vincent Vega in Pulp Fiction, he is also wearing a suit, and sort of if you look at any other crime films, detectives wear very formal suits just like the detective in my trailer. As I said earlier, sort of Vincent Vega wears a very sort of similar suit to that of my detective, and I sort of chose to do this so that the audience would sort of be able to recognise straight away that this character is a detective, so they know exactly what sort of character he plays straight away without even knowing the character themselves, knowing how he speaks, knowing what he actually does, but they sort of instantly be able to recognise for themselves that he is a detective due to the suit that he is wearing. And also the tie that my detective wears actually features a small stripe of red down the middle of it. I included this to connote that my character has a streak of danger in him, or he has a sort of love of danger, however the audience want to decode it. That is sort of the message I'm putting across. I got this idea from like the character John Luther, like I said earlier, as his costume is a red tie that I sort of feel connotes danger to the audience, as that character is sort of very dark and mysterious and has a very dangerous side. And I sort of, whilst watching this and researching into him, I sort of noticed his tie, noticed the connotations, and I just automatically took direct inspiration from this character and his costume and just sort of put it into practice in my own way with my own character with the stripe of red. The costume for my femme fatale character is also quite conventional. I mean, for example, she wears a very short, very tight black dress. This costume is mainly used to sort of show the audience her femininity and her power, because obviously black usually always connotes sort of like power. And the fact that she is in a short tight dress also connotes a different message to the audience, as it connotes that she sort of gains most of her power from her femininity and her sexuality. It can also be seen like this as well, can be seen by the fact that, sort of spoiler alert here, she only kills men as well, so this sort of connotes the audience that she could potentially use her sexuality to actually seduce the men before she then does go and kill them. And sort of I think this connotation could be seen right from the get-go with the very short skirt and the quite like made up face, and also the blonde hair, which are all very characteristic of the femme fatale sort of whole idea really. However, one sort of part which is missing from this femme fatale character, making her sort of conventional in some ways but in other ways not, is the fact that she doesn't have the iconic sort of red lipstick or any sort of red colour about her person at all. She has very blonde hair, but then with makeup it's sort of, although I did make sure she put makeup on, I sort of didn't want it to be sort of too thick, because I wanted her to also possibly connote a sort of innocent side to the audience, instead of just having the full danger of the red, because I thought if I was connoting danger from two different characters, the audience could possibly get a little bit confused, as both characters would be dangerous and they wouldn't really be able to tell if possibly like the protagonist was maybe an anti-hero, or the antagonist was also a protagonist as well, so I thought that would be a bit too much confusion. So I did want to keep her face sort of quite plain and sort of with a nude kind of colour on the lips, and sort of just mascara and her eyebrows done, instead of going for a full sort of like fully face of like very quite formal makeup. So this isn't really very conventional of the sort of femme fatale characters, as they're usually very well made up with sort of very out there like red lips and that. So I didn't choose to do that, but as I've said, there was a reason for that. However, sort of one major part of the mise-en-scène that's not very conventional at all is the fact that most of sort of like the camera work focuses on the props instead of the characters in the trailer. I decided to do this so that because I really didn't want to give too much away about my characters. I wanted the audience to sort of see a little insight of the characters but not see too much, so when my film finally does get released, the audience will actually want to go and see it because they won't know too much about them. Because obviously if I gave too much away about the characters and gave like the whole sort of their whole personas and that away just in the trailer, sort of the audience would get bored if they went to go see the film because they would already know basically. So I decided instead to focus on quite a large part of the plot in the trailer, or sort of like the main focus of the plot, but as the audience won't have seen the rest of the film, they still won't quite understand this plot, which will then again still intrigue them to want to go and see the film, because I have given away quite a large bit of the plot, but due to sort of it's out of context, the audience don't really understand it unless they go and see the film. I sort of feel as well that the camera work that I've used is also sort of quite conventional, as I've used the usual suspects of sort of like long shots to sort of establish locations for the audience so they can see sort of where the film's going to be set. I've used close-ups to show the audience sort of the emotional side and the sort of facial expressions that can be seen on the characters at different times, so that the audience can see that they do show emotion, and that this will mean sort of that the audience will sort of feel empathy towards the characters or like sympathise with them should anything happen to them in the film, as they'll sort of see their vulnerable side and they'll sort of gravitate towards that due to these close-ups. However, I have also used a tilt up and a tilt down in the trailer right at the end of both of the characters. I've used a tilt down of the male character and a tilt up of the female character, to show the costumes really, and to show that they are very different, because obviously the female character's got her legs out due to the fact she's in a short skirt and she's wearing high heels. Well, not a short skirt, she's in a short dress, and the male character, as he's wearing a suit, he's got long trousers and suit shoes on, so they're very different. This is actually also sort of an example of Laura Mulvey's male gaze theory, which isn't actually sort of a common theory that can actually be applied to crime films, as females are never sort of really a main feature of crime films in my opinion, and therefore like the male gaze theory cannot really be used because the camera can't show where the male gaze is looking if it's just looking at like a bunch of men really, so it doesn't really work. So I've sort of tried to include this, like the male gaze theory in this, as I did have a very sexualised female character in this. In terms of editing, again, I do feel it is quite conventional, because obviously it's a trailer. I have to keep some things very conventional because otherwise it wouldn't be a trailer and it would turn into a film or the opening 2 minutes of a film. So I do have to keep some things very like tightly in with the conventions, but other things like the plot and some of my characters' costumes and that I can sort of spread out from the conventions a bit and go in a different direction. But yeah, editing wise is sort of very conventional so that it can be sort of a trailer. So I've used quick cuts in between sections so that I don't give too much information away like right from the beginning, because again, like I've said before, people will not want to go see the film if they've already seen a lot of it happen in the trailer. And it also adds mystery a little bit to the trailer as well, because if they're not seeing everything that's going to happen in the film, there's stuff that they're not seeing but it's sort of being connoted that they're missing a part through like what else they're like being shown. It's sort of like a missing puzzle piece, so they'll sort of want to go and see that and understand what was missing in the trailer. one aspect of editing itself that I didn't actually really stick heavily to the conventions with is the fades to black and the fades to whites that I've used. These are not really conventional. It's usually, like I've said, quick cuts are used, so there's usually not really a reason to do a quick cut and then fade it. But sort of I felt that I wanted to add these because I sort of felt that they made my trailer flow a little bit better throughout and sort of gave it a sort of mysterious feel, or as if sort of it was a dream or something, like it was going quite slow, but then in other places it was going quite fast. The sort of like the fades to black and the fades to white that I use are not actually really particularly conventional of the crime genre, as sort of where quick cuts are used generally in trailers you don't actually need to fade them to black because you've already cut it very quickly, or fade it to white in fact. But I felt that by doing this, the quick cuts, and then sort of adding a fade to black over the top of some of them in particular, or a fade to white, I sort of felt that it made my trailer flow a little bit better, and it could sort of make the audience feel as if perhaps the whole trailer was a dream because it was going quite slow in some places and then quite fast in the others. Or sort of, I just felt it made my trailer flow a lot better than it did when I just had straight up quick cuts. It also sort of, or like connoted to the audience a few more messages than it would have done had I just used quick cuts. For example, with the fade to whites in particular, sometimes the audience could possibly have decoded this into sort of a symbolic use of a gunshot particularly. They might have thought that there was actually a sort of shootout in my film, which obviously there won't be, but as the audience, some audiences might be sort of attracted to this sort of thing, they might go and watch it just purely because they think this might be in it, or just because they sort of want to find out if the fade to white did mean anything, or if it was just simply because I thought it looked better than another fade to black, because that could have got quite repetitive. Finally, the sound that I used was all very non-diegetic, which means that it was all added in post-production, so after I'd filmed it, and the actors were unable to hear it whilst they were being filmed and whilst they were being recorded. This is quite conventional of a trailer music-wise, as there is usually a frequent amount of sort of like non-diegetic music throughout trailers to sort of keep the audience interested, as there's a lot of sort of like music going on, and sort of to tense or add sort of a tense atmosphere to a particular part of the trailer, or to add a calm atmosphere. But they can sort of, having music in the background of a trailer can definitely affect the emotions of the audience watching it, which is why I used a piece of music throughout mine that sort of changed slightly and picked up tempo and lost a few sounds throughout, just to sort of change it up a bit and to sort of pull on the emotions of different people so they all feel different things. However, I did actually use non-diegetic dialogue as well, which for my trailer, which is actually quite non-conventional, as most trailers have sort of little snippets of diegetic dialogue, so dialogue that could be heard by the actors as they were getting recorded because they were saying it to other actors. I sort of decided against this as I felt sort of that my audience could possibly feel more involved with the trailer if I use sort of a non-diegetic monologue from one of the characters rather than a conversation between the two characters, as it sort of would feel as if they were getting spoken to by this particular character rather than they were just sat there witnessing a sort of conversation between two different characters in the trailer, so that's why I did that. So yeah, sort of in conclusion, I feel that my trailer does both sort of challenge and develop certain conventions of the crime genre and conventions of a trailer, but I also think in some ways it does stick to a few of the conventions, as sort of if I had developed or challenged these particular conventions that I stuck to, my trailer would not have been able to fit into the crime genre or into sort of the category of a trailer, as it wouldn't have worked due to not fitting in with these conventions. However, the conventions that I have developed or challenged, I felt that they were there sort of to be challenged or be developed, as I felt that by doing this I could actually improve my trailer and make it more interesting and more appealing to my target audience and anybody that wanted to watch it, really. So yeah, that's it from me. I hope you sort of understood this, and thank you for watching, and I hope you go and now watch my trailer. Goodbye.